Hello everyone, welcome to week 3 of Summer Challenge 2021 Tails and Tales. In this week's program, we are going to be making animal ear hats. So stay tuned for the tutorial. Before we get started, I do want to make a little disclaimer. This is not going to be a sewing tutorial per se. For that, I'm going to link some videos from YouTube that give some more detailed descriptions on how to sew. This is going to be more just how to sew this specific project. So with that being said, bear with me through this one and let's get started. Alrighty guys, so first things first, let's go over the materials you're going to need for this program. So the first thing that you're going to need is some fabric. If you got a grab and go kit, then you should have 2 pieces of fabric included with that. There is a nice faux fur and then a fleece. If you are looking for material in a store, I would recommend going with a fur, obviously, if you want something fuzzy. You could also try just doing all fleece if you want something that's soft but not necessarily too like out there. You can also use felt, or you could use a flannel or a cotton. Really just kind of browse around the fabric store and see what calls out to you. You're probably going to need 2 different types of fabric, or at least 2 different colors. So one for the outside of the ear and then one for the inside of the ear, just to give it some dimension. If you go to buy fabric from the store, really all you're going to need is 1/4 yard. If you can get it even smaller than that, that would be amazing. A lot of fabric stores have remnant sections, so whenever the roll of fabric gets to a point where it can't be cut for customers anymore, it's bundled up and sold at a discounted price. As just a small little remnant. It's just a little piece. So if you can find something like that, that would be great. Otherwise, if you just want to get a whole bunch and make a whole bunch of these for yourself or your friends and family, or maybe you want to make a tail to go along with it, or a blanket or a cape or something like that, then by all means, I'm not going to try to convince you not to buy an entire yard of faux fur, because I cannot be convincing myself to not do that, so no judgment from me. The next thing that you're going to need is a needle. Since we are working with thicker fabric, you definitely want to make sure that you're using a needle that is sharp. You don't want one that has a blunt edge, or otherwise you're really going to struggle with sewing this piece. Now, you actually don't have to sew this at all. You could go a completely different route and use hot glue or fabric glue, depending on how patient you are for waiting for things to dry. Really the choice is yours. I am going to go with showing you guys how to do the sewing method, because I do think that that's going to be the most challenging. The next thing we're going to need, obviously, is thread if we are sewing. I just have a couple pieces of embroidery floss. You can use regular thread. If you are using embroidery floss, you don't want anything this thick. Embroidery floss is really thick. So what we actually want to do is unravel it a little bit. And if we do that, we can see actually that embroidery floss is made up of several smaller pieces of string. So I'm going to go ahead and just take out one of those strands. So I got one strand ready to go. Like I said, if you're just using regular multi-purpose thread, you can skip this step entirely and just have your spool ready on standby. All right, so we have our fabric, we have our needle and thread, and the last thing that we need is our beanie. You can make your own custom beanie if you want. There are patterns for that on the internet that you can certainly find. You can buy your own pre-made beanie like we have included in our kit. You could forego the beanie entirely and decide to do a headband. You could do a different type of hat. The choice is really up to you. The next thing that you're going to need that isn't included with your kit is a good pair of scissors, and I mean a really good pair of scissors. If you have fabric scissors at your house, I definitely recommend using those. And if you have fabric scissors, don't use them for anything else because it ruins the fabric scissors. FYI. But yeah, you want to use some good scissors, because otherwise when you go to cut through this thick material, it's just gonna be such a hassle. And just trust me, you don't want to go through that. So make sure you're using good scissors. Next thing that you want to use, which I am not doing because, you know, don't do as I say, not as I do. You want to make sure that you have something good to mark your fabric with. So I have a blue marker, which is going to work well for this light colored fabric, but as we can see on the back of this faux fur, it is black. So this marker is likely, yeah, I didn't even try it yet. It's not going to show up very well. I can see it very faintly, and I'm just going to roll with it for the tutorial's sake. But if I were you, I would recommend using either a piece of chalk that will show up well on a black piece of fabric, or a metallic marker. Either way, you want something that's going to show for sure to make this a lot easier for yourself. And the last thing that you're going to need is some paper. It doesn't matter what kind of paper it is. I'm just using construction paper and it's red. But you just want to use this to make your pattern. So I've already started sketching like ear shapes, general ear shapes. You're going to make your own pattern based off of what kind of ears you want, and where you want them to lay on your hat. So that was a lot of stuff. Let's go ahead and get started. A little pro tip for you: whenever you're not using your needle, if you just want to put it in the corner of your light colored fabric, it'll be a good way to keep track of it without stabbing yourself later. Okay, so first things first, we want to draw a pattern. So like I said, I've already started doodling kind of a rough shape of what I'm going for here. I think personally I want some cat ears on my hat. So first thing we're gonna do is try on our hat. Yeah, it's gonna mess up my hair, but it's all for the cause. Okay, so we're gonna put our hat on. And at this point, you want to decide whether you want to wear it without a fold or with a fold, or slouchy or tight, however you want to do it. I think for me, I'm going to try to go for a pretty tight fit with a fold. So I'm going to do that. And we're going to try to center. There are seams here that point up. You want to try to center those on either side of your head, because that is actually where we're going to attach the ears. So I'm just going to get this pretty tight on my head, and I think pretty well centered. Okay, so now at this point I want to try to figure out kind of how big I want the ears to be, and what shape and so on. So I'm going to take my little pattern that I've already drawn, and I actually think I really like that shape, even though it's the first one I drew, so I'm just going to roll with it. You want to cut this out, and when you cut it out, don't use the fabric cutting scissors, okay? Use regular scissors. So I just want a rough idea of of where this is going to go. So we're looking about like that, and flip this over about like that. Okay, so I can tell already that I want my ears to be a little bit bigger, and I want them to have less of a curve, because right now they kind of look like little pig ears. What we're gonna do then is I'll show you how we'll make those adjustments. Okay, so we have the piece I cut out already, and like I said, I want it to be a little bit bigger, and I want less of a slope, not less of a slope, but less of a like tail on the slope, if that makes sense. I'll show you as I do it. So I want them to be bigger, so the first thing I'm gonna do is do a rough outline about, I'm gonna say like a 1/4 inch outwards from where the line is already. So roughly about a 1/4 inch there. And I'm just gonna basically do the same kind of general shape, but you know, obviously bigger. And for tutorial purposes, I'm just gonna leave that little dip that I was talking about on here for now. Okay, so in order to fix this dip that I'm referring to, it's going outwards, which is not really what a cat's ears looks like. They actually go in, and then sometimes they have little tufts of fur that go out this way, but it's never like, well, I'm not gonna say never, but usually it's not skin that's going over here. It's usually gonna be more of a dome like this. So one side's gonna come like this, the other side's gonna come like this, and it's gonna make like a domed roof kind of deal. And I'm just gonna flip this over and look at it some more and decide if that is more what I'm looking for. Okay, so all I did is make it a little bit more rounded at the top, so it's not like a point, it's like a little like round peak. So I'm just gonna do that, and I think that's all I'm gonna do. I think that is probably good. So again, we're gonna cut this out, not with our fabric cutting scissors. Do not use the fabric cutting scissors on anything else but fabric. Moving on. So we're gonna cut this out with our regular scissors, and then once again put it up on my head to see if I like that a little bit better. So I'll be back momentarily. Okay, so I've cut out my new formed pattern. And we're going to figure out which way it goes. If it makes it easier, you can put like a little, like well, let's see. It's this way, and then this way. It's a little different. Okay, I feel like I've effectively turned these cat ears into cow ears, is the vibe that I am getting. And the reason it's doing that is because of where it is like falling on the hat. So in order to fix that, we're actually going to kind of look of where it should fall if it were cat ears. So if it were cat ears, it'd be like a little bit, I'm just placing it behind. And I'm actually gonna do it, I like that way better. I just flipped it around. So what I'm gonna do is take my marker. I'm gonna mark right here, just a rough outline. Okay, and then I'm gonna bring that down here, and I am going to put an F on it for front so I know which side is which. Finishing up our pattern piece, we're actually going to place the hat flat on the table. So let me bring you down here. Okay, so hat is flat on the table, and we can actually put this with our rough little line that we made. We can line this up with where it was whenever it was on our head. From there, you can decide whether or not you want to adjust it even more. So I actually am seeing that this is a little bit smaller than I wanted. Whenever it's like this, I'm just going to pull it out a little bit and put it right about there, and then I'm just going to draw the line again, and then cut that final piece. This is what our ear looks like. It's going to be one here, and then flip it, there's going to be one over here. Okay, so now that that's over with, we're going to move on to cutting the pattern. And you want the F to be facing down because we're actually going to be drawing on the wrong side of the fabric. With this one, it's not really, you can't really tell which one's the right or wrong side because they're both the same. But for example, with a fur, this is the wrong side of the fabric, this black. And then the actual fur on the other side, this is the right side. So you don't want to draw on the right side because you don't want it to be seen whenever your project is finished. So that being said, flipping this over so that the front is on the other side. And I'm just gonna trace this. And I'm not gonna trace it exactly like where the paper ends. I'm gonna leave a little bit of room. And when I cut it, I'm actually gonna leave a little bit more room for what is called seam allowance. So whenever you sew, it's gonna be easier if you have some extra over here to give you some space to put your stitches in rather than trying to do it with such little tiny space, if that makes sense. Okay, so now that was our one ear. So it's front, let me think about this, front left ear. So front left is right there, and I'm actually gonna put that here too. This is an L for left. And then I'm gonna go ahead and flip it this way. And same thing, I'm gonna trace this. We're gonna put a little R there for the right. So now, we're gonna take a fabric cut scissors. And I'm just going to first roughly cut around these guys, real rough like, just to get rid of some excess fabric. So now I'm going to cut these out, and in order to figure out how much seam allowance I'm going to do, I'm just kind of winging it. I'm going to cut in between these two, like equal down the middle. So I would say roughly what we're going with is about 1/4 inch of seam allowance. You can do more or less, it's up to you. Okay, so now this is where we should have chalk of some sort, but we don't. So in order to trace these pieces, since this is the back side, we actually want to flip it so that the backs are touching each other in order to get the shapes that we want. If you are using a marker, be careful that you're not getting like blue all over yourself, because I don't know, it could end up like on your, like the good side of the fabric, so I'm gonna be really careful here. Alright, so I just threw that out and I literally cannot see it at all, and I don't have any chalk, so I'm just gonna start cutting. Actually, I'm gonna take my needle. If you have pins, use those instead. Again, do as I do. No, don't do as I do. Do as I say, not as I do, because I am winging this. Okay, so now I'm gonna start cutting. And you're gonna notice as you cut faux fur, literally anytime you cut faux fur, it is going to shed and basically get everywhere. So a heads up on that one. It's gonna happen, you cannot avoid it. Okay, so we have one ear. Next, let's do our second ear. Same thing, we want the wrong side of our pink fabric to be facing the wrong side of our fur fabric, or whatever fabric you're using. Again, if you have actual pins, you can pin all around the outside here, but I'm professional, which means that I don't follow the rules. Even with fabric cutting scissors, cutting this kind of like faux fur is still a nightmare. So definitely have fabric cutting scissors. Again, I cannot emphasize it enough. If you don't, it's just gonna be awful. It's gonna take so long. It's gonna be frustrating. It's gonna hurt your hand as you cut. So fabric cutting scissors all the way. Trust me. Okay, so now you have whatever extra fabric you have to do whatever you want. I'll just set mine aside and figure out something to do with it later. Okay, so now we have both of our ears all set. And right now we have both wrong sides facing each other, which if you are gluing, this is the point where you would just take this, glue right here, and then glue it on, and voila, that's pretty much it. Since we're gonna sew, we're actually going to flip it up a little bit. I'm just gonna take some of this excess shedding stuff out of here. So you actually want your right sides to be facing each other. So what that means is we're going to flip these on itself so that the fur is touching the right side of this fabric, which doesn't have marks on it, like so. And then the same thing on this side. So flip, and flip. All right, so wrong sides are facing out on both sides. Okay, so from here, we're gonna start sewing. This is where things are going to get interesting. I'm not going to film the whole thing because that's gonna take forever. Forever. It's gonna take forever. Oh man, that's good. So anyway, we are going to, what was I saying? Oh yes. I'm not going to show you the whole process because I'm probably going to end up actually taking this home today. And it's probably going to take me, I don't know, like 2 hours around there to do everything from start to finish. So, so first thing I'm going to do is take my thread and I'm going to pull it through my needle. And what I like to do, because I tend to tug pretty hard whenever I'm sewing, what I like to do is double up my thread. So what I did was pull the thread through and then basically folded it over on itself, so I actually have 2 tails on the end instead of 1. And then what I do is just wrap it, or excuse my blue fingers, wrap it around my finger and then make a knot like so. So I'm going to start with my left ear, I guess. And basically what we want to do, since this is the bottom of the ear where we are going to attach it to the beanie, we don't want to sew this part. We just want to sew up here, and then we're going to flip it inside out, and then we'll sew this part to the beanie. Okay, so we're not sewing all 3 sides, we're just sewing the tops and then leaving the part where it's going to connect to the beanie open for now. Okay, so I'm going to try to get closer here. Again, if you had pins, those would be ideal. You just pin around the entire outside, and that's really going to help you. But I like to live life on the edge, what can I say? So I'm just going to sandwich these and just start. So I'm going to start from this bottom corner here, and I'm going to push through both layers. Okay. And pull it through, but I'm not going to pull it the whole way. I'm going to leave a little bit extra here. So then I'm going to go back through the other side, but I want to keep the stitch pretty close to where I went down through. And I'm going to pull that through. And before I tug the whole way, I am going to loop my needle through that knot that we just made. So it's actually going to catch on itself and be nice and secure. So pull it through and pull it tight. Again, if you need a more in-depth sewing tutorial, I recommend checking one out on YouTube or asking a friend or family member to give you a little tutorial. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do our stitches. So we're just going to go back and forth. 1, and then back up, 2. Basically, we want our stitches to be pretty close together. Like there's probably about 1 millimeter there between them. We want them to be close enough together that whenever we flip it inside out, there aren't holes. But you don't want it to be so close together that it just becomes excessive and like you don't, you're just doing extra work that doesn't need to be done. If you're using a sewing machine, this is going to go a heck of a lot faster, but we're just going to continue with this. So I'll show you a couple more stitches. Just go down through, and then it's hard to do this with you guys watching, and then up and back through. Okay, so I'm going to finish this ear, and then I will come back when I get to the other side, and I will show you how I finish my stitch. Real quick, you also want to make sure that you're not pulling so tight that you are bunching your fabric like that, where it's like twisting. You want to pull it tight enough that nothing's going to come loose, but you don't want it to lose its shape. So good rule of thumb there is just kind of like straighten it out whenever you need to, and you should be fine. Also, I recommend sewing with the lighter colored fabric facing you, because it's going to be a lot easier to see those lines you made on the fabric in order to follow them to complete your stitches. The last thing I'm going to say is try to relax when you're doing this. Don't relax enough that you're going to accidentally stab yourself in the finger, because that really hurts. If you want to get a thimble, I would recommend it. If you don't want to get, I just poked myself right there. But yeah, try to just chill and let the process kind of zone you out a little bit. And as long as you do that and try not to allow yourself to get frustrated, sewing can actually be a very relaxing experience. Okay, so I have made it to the end. You can see all of my stitches there. They're pretty close together and they're pretty short, but they're not like super tight or anything like that. So that's about what you want to go for, like I said, so that way there's no holes, but you're also not like creating more work for yourself. So now, this is where my needle's at right now. It is on the side of the fabric that is the wrong side of the faux fur. So I'm actually gonna push it back towards you guys, there. And I'm gonna pull it through. Okay, now this is gonna be tricky for you guys to see. I'm gonna do my best. And if it doesn't work out, you can always find a better sewing tutorial, I'm sure. So, we're going to push this through pretty close to where we just came up from, but not exactly beside it. We're gonna push it through, and then I'm gonna just use my pinky inside the thread here, just so it doesn't go through the whole way, and you'll see why. So I'm gonna pull this through here, keeping that thread still with a loop, okay? And now I'm going to come back to the front. Same thing, you want it to be close to where you went back, but not exactly there. So you're gonna pull that through, and then we're going to take the needle, and just like we did at the beginning, we're gonna catch the thread on itself. So we're gonna go ahead and put it through that loop that we've been holding and pull upwards. And what that's gonna do is create a nice secure knot. If you wanna do that twice just to be extra safe, you certainly can, but that should be good to go. So now I'm just going to cut that thread. You can use fabric scissors to cut thread, that is okay, but yeah, that's as far as it goes. So now I'm going to take the thread off of my needle and just put it aside. And I'm going to do the other ear completely off camera, so let me just show you what we would do with this one next. So what you would do is take the side that you didn't sew and then flip it inside out, and you have an adorable, this is so cute, I can't believe it turned out this cute, adorable little ear, okay? If you sew this instead of gluing it like I did, then you can actually take the fur and kind of pull it out of the edges, because some of it gets stuck in the stitches that you made. So you can actually just kind of like gently pull that out, and it's going to give it more of a fuzzy effect, I guess. And there you have it. That is one ear down, one to go. Alrighty, you guys, it is the next day, and I have both of my ears finished, sewn, and flipped right side out. Okay, so now comes the tricky part of attaching our ears to our beanie. So to do that, you want to make sure that you're putting them in the right place. So what I'm going to do is put the beanie on. Great. And one moment. Okay. All right, so put the beanie on and make sure you get this seam up here kind of centered. Feel it out, because that's where we're going to be putting our ears. So now we are going to go ahead and figure out where we want these. I think I want them about there. So what I'm going to do is pinch them to the hat, pull the hat off, and then put it down, and I'm going to be able to see about where that was. Okay, so it is literally lining up with the end of the seams. Okay, so where I want the ears is lining up with right where this starts to curve. Okay, so now you know where you want your ears to go. Now it is time to sew them to the beanie itself. So to do that, you're gonna wanna pin this in place here. So take a pin and just pin it so that it is sticking like this behind there, okay? And then once it's pinned, then you're just gonna sew a line straight across the bottom and flip it around and you'll be done. So first ear is sewn on. Okay, so both ears are sewn on and it's going to be time for the grand reveal. Alrighty, you guys, this is the finished product. So as you can see, we got the fuzzy in the back and the little pink in the front. And they turned out a little bit more like wolf ears, I think, than cat ears, but we still nailed it. We still nailed it. Thank you so much for joining me for week 3 of Summer Challenge 2021 Tails and Tales. Make sure that you check out this week's Beanstack Challenge, which is a sensory exercise. So using your journal, you are going to go outside and just sit down and relax, and then write in your journal reflecting on everything that you sensed outside. So it could be I saw, I heard, I hear, I smell. Be sure to do that for an activity badge. Our next grab and go kits will drop next Monday, and our next program will be dropping next Wednesday. So I hope to see you then, and until then, happy Summer Challenge.